North and South Korea will kick off high-level talks in just a few hours, the first in more than 2 years. The meeting is being seen as an opportunity to ease tensions after a tumultuous year in which Kim Jong-un's regime accelerated its nuclear weapons program, and U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to strike back with fire and fury. Let's get to our Bloomberg chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Engle. He joins us from the Unification Bridge on the South Korean side of the DMZ. Steve, tell us the feeling on the ground right now. Looking to be pretty busy and lively where you are. Can these talks go beyond just the Winter Olympics?
Well, that's what we're all expecting or anticipating, that where the scope of the talks will go beyond, of course, adding North Koreans to the South Korean Winter Olympics delegation. That will likely be discussed at the top of the agenda, but other issues, of course, could be discussed. Such, of course, is the nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, or the dismantling, the potential dismantling of Kim Jong-un's nuclear and missile programs. Perhaps the restarting of the Gaesan industrial complex across the border. That was that unprecedented joint venture, if you will, between the two countries that was shut down in retaliation for the North's nuclear and missile programs. Let me just set the scene right now. We are at the entrance to the reunification bridge, which leads into the JSA, the Joint Security Area of the DMZ, and the Panmunjom Peace Area, where the talks at 10 o'clock local time, so in 2 hours from now, will take place with face-to-face between North and South Korea. This is the bridge that leads in here. Right here, momentarily, we're expecting the South Korean delegation to arrive. We've already seen a couple of cars come through, the advance party. They did leave Seoul about 2 hours ago. They should be arriving very soon to begin the preparations for those anticipated talks. The first piece, well, not necessarily peace talks, but direct face-to-face talks since December of 2015. So there's a lot on the line, of course, and we're anticipating a big delegation coming through soon.
Stephen, we talked with a guest earlier, Gordon Chang, who's been a longtime observer of North Korean relations, and he says, look, we've seen this, we've been at this rodeo before. If North Korea does not get what it wants, we'll see some sort of retaliation or a tantrum, as he called it. Is that likely to happen if, for some reason, these talks don't make any progress?
Well, there's so much at stake, of course, for both sides, and the fact that they are talking, and the North Koreans have accepted the overture from the South for these talks, is a good sign. Do they go beyond, though, the inclusion of the North Korean two athletes, the two figure skaters, onto the South Korean Olympic team for the Pyeongchang Olympics, which begin a month from today? If these talks can go beyond that, that would signal, obviously, a victory for the South Koreans, and also, if you will, the United States as well, because the ultimate goal for the United States and South Korea and Japan and others at stake here is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. That is very unlikely, of course, to happen or as a result of these talks, but the fact that they're talking is a good thing. But there is wariness. Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, has said talks for the sake of talks are meaningless. Also, the U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis has said North Korea cannot drive a wedge into U.S.-South Korean alliance, and that's the key here. How can South Korea engage with North Korea, have that much-needed dialogue without allowing Kim Jong-un and Pyongyang to drive a wedge into that rock-solid South Korean-U.S. alliance? And also, South Koreans must uphold the red line, if you will, on sanctions from the UN Security Council.
Steve, we've been talking about how President Trump has been saying that these talks are positive. They're obviously looking at this from the sidelines, China as well, but they've been relatively quiet here overall on what they're expecting out of these talks.
What China is expecting, well, it's surely that the fact that the talks are happening following that New Year's address from Kim Jong-un, that China perhaps is wielding its influence behind the scenes. So the Trump administration's efforts to get China to play a stronger role, whether Trump's bellicose rhetoric on Twitter has helped, we don't necessarily know, but it is sure that China is having somewhat of an impact to get the North to come to the table later this morning. And And keep in mind, it is the dead of winter right now. It is freezing cold here, and these sanctions are likely biting hard and fast across the border to the north, whether it is the oil embargo, the partial oil embargo, also the ban on exports of a lot of North Korea's key exports like coal. These are really having a financial impact on the north. That could have been a significant impetus for the north saying, hey, you know what? It's okay. Now is the time to talk.